It was the summer of 1889, and the heat in Hollow Rock was thick as molasses and just as suffocating. The kind of heat that makes a man sweat before he even stirs from bed and turns the courthouse into a pressure cooker of judgment and dry brows dabbed with kerchiefs. That's where she sat, Mercy. They called her, though not kindly, not anymore. Mercy had the look of someone who'd stopped hoping a long time ago. Dust clung to her hem like guilt, and her eyes, gray and watchful, didn't flinch when the judge peered over his spectacles at her. Her wrists were shackled, the iron glinting in the summer light, and her back straight despite the heavy air. Folks crowded the benches, fanning themselves with folded papers and half-hidden grins, eager to see what justice looked like when served to a girl with no kin, no coin, and no voice. Mayor Elwood Thatcher was dead, poisoned, they said, and Mercy had been the last one in the room. That was all it took in a place like Hollow Rock. Didn't matter none that the mayor was a cruel man with a hand heavy and a voice sweet only when others were watching. Mercy had worked in his house, cleaned his floors, borne his silence, and worse. But no one wanted to hear about that. They only wanted someone to blame. The prosecutor, a wiry man named Jacobs with a voice like a buzzing wasp, held up a bottle. Belladonna, he spat. The devil's own herb. Just one drop will stop a heart quicker than a bullet. The crowd murmured, leaned in, licked their lips. The judge nodded, uninterested. Mercy's court-appointed lawyer, Mr. Blackwell, stood once all morning and said 3 words that mattered not a lick. No real proof. The judge didn't even let him finish. The break came before sentencing, but it wasn't a reprieve. It was an intermission in a play whose end had already been written. Mercy was let out through the back hall like smoke through a chimney, quiet and inevitable. That's when the saloon doors down the street creaked open, and a shadow walked out. He wore a battered coat the color of red dust, and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low, the brim casting shade over a face carved from stone and sun. His name was Calder, though folks whispered other names when he wasn't listening. Some called him the Gunslinger of El Paso. Others just called him that devil with a draw faster in thought. But what folks didn't know, what they hadn't seen in years, was the way he looked when he was angry and quiet. And he was real quiet that day. He didn't march into the courthouse. He strolled, slow and sure, like he owned the place and every breath inside it. The townsfolk quieted like someone had slapped a hand over their mouths. The judge blinked, confused. Jacob stood frozen mid-sentence. Mercy didn't look up, but she felt it, like the way the wind shifts before a storm. "I object," Calder said, not shouting, just talking, but the sound of his voice filled the whole place. "You're about to sentence my wife." The silence snapped, then burst into noise like a hive knocked off its perch. Whispers flew like crows, flapping their black wings. The judge hammered his gavel, shouting for order. Mercy's head rose slow. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. She stared at the man, tall, grim, and unexpected, and the courthouse no longer felt so hot. It felt like something had broken open. Calder stepped forward, pulled a folded paper from his coat, and set it down on the table. "Marriage license," he said. "Signed in Abilene last year. And a telegram I sent the mayor the day before he died. I came to claim her." He didn't answer. The judge squinted at the paper, grunted. Jacobs protested, his voice shrill and empty. The courtroom buzzed with disbelief and wonder. Mercy just stared. This man, this stranger who claimed her as his wife, was real, was here. And the fire in her chest, long buried, sparked back to life. She didn't know his game. But whatever it was better than a rope. And so ended the first act of the trial of Mercy. The sentence delayed. The story just beginning. The courthouse emptied slow, like a saloon after a brawl. Folks not wanting to admit they were afraid, but feeling it all the same. Mercy sat alone in a back room now, her hand still cuffed, though the tension in the air had shifted. Outside, Calder leaned against a hitching post, staring at the horizon like it owed him money. Sheriff Dobbins stood near, hat in hand, trying to make sense of what just happened. "You got any idea what you done stirred up?" the sheriff asked, not unkindly. Calder didn't look at him. "I didn't come to stir. I came to stop something from boiling over." They called it a recess, But really it was the whole town trying to figure out if they'd just seen a miracle or a well-dressed lie. The judge called for a day's delay to review the papers. Mercy's shackles came off, but not her doubt. When the deputy opened the holding room door, Calder stepped in. He didn't say a word at first, just looked at her, his face lined like a dry riverbed, his eyes soft but heavy. "You gonna tell me what this is?" Mercy asked, her voice like wind blowing over coals. Not hot, but smoldering. "I gave my word to a man," Calder said, sitting across from her. "Told him if anything happened, I'd come for you." Mercy blinked. "What man?" "Your brother, Isaac. He served with me in the territory. Saved my life once. Told me if anything ever happened to him, I'd find his sister in Hollow Rock. Said she might need Savon, too." The name hit her like a kick to the ribs. Isaac had gone west 2 years back. Letters stopped last fall. She'd feared the worst, but never had word. "He's gone," Calder said. "Stagecoach ambush out near Silver Spur. I found his journal, and the letter with your name in it. Took me a while to get here." She sat back, heart thudding. "So this marriage, it ain't real?" Calder shrugged. "Real enough on paper. Legal in Abilene. Bought it from a judge who don't ask questions. But no, Mercy. I didn't come here to chain you to me. I came to break yours." She looked at him hard. "And what do you want in return?" He looked down, thumbed the brim of his hat. "Nothing. But I got a place 3 days west. Quiet, shaded, and paid for. You want to come, you're welcome. You don't," he stood. "You'll walk out of this town tomorrow a free woman, thanks to a lie with my name on it." She didn't answer. That night, she slept in a cot at the back of the sheriff's house. Didn't close her eyes much. Not 'cause she didn't trust Calder, but because the weight of possibility was heavier than any chain. Next morning, the judge announced her release. No new evidence, he said, but with a marriage document and no clear motive, the court had insufficient cause to convict. Jacobs near choked on his mustache. Folks filed out in a hush. Calder waited outside, saddled and ready. Mercy stepped up, looking at the road, not him. "You said you had a place." "I do," he nodded. "Ain't much, but it's mine." "Then I reckon I'll see it," she said, and mounted up. As they rode west, the sun high and hot on their backs, Mercy didn't look back at Hollow Rock. That place had taken near every piece of her. But the trail ahead, dusty, uncertain, wild, was hers to walk. And she wasn't walking it alone. 3 days on horseback'll test a soul, especially when the land's dry and the sun's beaten down like it's got a grudge. But Mercy didn't complain, and Calder didn't explain. They moved like ghosts across the scrublands, talking little, thinking much. They passed fields gone fallow and streams barely trickling. Buzzards circled overhead, and coyotes sang at night. Calder's horse, a steady gray gelding named Bramble, never spooked. Mercy rode a smaller bay, a mare with a temper, but smart, same as the woman on her back. By the second night, they camped near a rock outcrop, high enough to catch the breeze. Calder built the fire with practiced hands, his movements quiet and deliberate. Mercy watched him as she peeled a potato with his hunting knife, the blade still stained from old stories. "You ever been married for real?" she asked, breaking the silence. Calder paused, looking into the flames. "Once. Long time ago. She died birthing a boy who didn't breathe long enough to cry." Mercy didn't say nothing, just nodded, the air thick with unspoken things. Later that night, she woke to find him standing watch. He'd left her the blanket and sat with his back to the fire, eyes on the hills. She watched him a while before speaking. "Why'd you keep the name Calder?" she asked. He glanced over his shoulder. "Because the man I was before, he died a long time ago. Calder's who I became when I laid him to rest." Mercy nodded. "Then maybe that's what I'll do too. Bury who I was." The next day, they reached Redemption Ridge, a place not marked on any map. It weren't much more than a cabin with a porch and a barn that leaned like it had been through its own battles. But there was water, trees for shade, and quiet, sweet, golden quiet. "You live here alone?" she asked, dismounting. "I do now," Calder said, tying off the horses. Inside, it smelled of cedar and dust. A worn rifle hung above the hearth. One bed, one chair, a kitchen with room enough for two. Mercy walked the length of the room, ran her fingers over a shelf of books. Most were worn down to the spines. One caught her eye. The Law of the Land. She turned to see Calder watching her. "You read?" she asked. He nodded. "Helps settle the ghosts." She set the book down gentle. "Maybe I'll read out loud sometime. Might help settle mine, too." That night, they sat on the porch as the sun bled into the hills. Mercy pulled her knees to her chest. Calder offered her the last of the coffee, lukewarm but strong. "Why'd you really come for me?" she asked. He took a long breath. "Because you were owed something better." She didn't answer right away. Then, after a long pause, she said, "I don't know what better looks like, but I think I'd like to find out." Calder tipped his hat low. "Then we'll find it together." The cicadas sang, and the stars came out one by one. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something like peace. And in that scorched land under a wide western sky, that was plenty. The days that followed were filled with simple things, morning chores, strong coffee, and the kind of quiet work that fills the hands and calms the mind. Mercy tended a small patch of garden with stubborn determination, and Calder spent his time mending fences, both wooden and invisible. They didn't speak much of the past, but now and then, in the heat of afternoon or the hush of twilight, pieces of it slipped out between them like seams coming undone. Mercy told him about the mayor, how his kindness was the kind that cut when no one was watching, how she'd once tried to leave, but the sheriff talked her down, said it was better to stay put than draw trouble. Calder just nodded, jaw tight. Some men use their power like a whip, and some women survive it like stone. They didn't speak of it again. They didn't have to. But peace in those parts never lasted long. Not with hollow rock behind them and suspicion riding on the wind. It started with hoof prints near the creek, too deep, too fresh, and too many. Then came the hawk, circling high and slow, watching the ridge like a scout. By the fourth day, Mercy spotted the first rider, just a shape on the far hill, still as death, watching. That night, Calder oiled his rifle by lantern light. Mercy watched from the doorway. "You know who they are?" she asked. He nodded once. "Mayor Thatcher's boys. He had nephews out east. One of them a banker, the other meaner and a cornered snake. They came west for the will, and they won't take kindly to you walking away with what they think's theirs." "I didn't walk away with anything," she muttered. Calder gave a thin smile. "Don't matter to men like them. They'll want blood, yours or mine or both." The next morning, he rode into town for supplies. When he came back, Mercy was sitting on the porch, a shotgun across her lap, and a look in her eyes that could split granite. "You taught yourself to shoot?" he asked. "Didn't have to," she said. "Just remembered my daddy's hands. How he held the stock. How he breathed when he pulled the trigger. Guess I paid more attention than I thought." He nodded with a touch of pride. "You hold it like you mean it." "I do." That night, they slept light. The stars were sharp overhead, and when the coyotes howled, neither of them flinched. It was the silence they feared more, the kind that came before men on horses with hard hearts. They were coming. Calder could feel it in his bones. So he sharpened his knife, checked the rifle, and left a second pistol on the table beside Mercy's chair. "If it comes to it," he said, "you run west. There's a trail that'll take you through the pass." Mercy didn't touch the gun, just looked him in the eye. "I won't run." He swallowed, then nodded. "Then we'll stand." And under the low, red moon, they waited, two souls who had lost everything but each other, ready to stake their claim against the world. Dawn broke like a blade across the horizon, sharp, blinding, and without mercy. The air was still, heavy with the weight of what hadn't yet happened but surely would. Calder stood in the doorway, rifle in hand, hat low over his eyes. "They'll come from the east," he muttered. "Use the sun to blind us." Mercy tied her hair back, her hand steady even if her heart wasn't. She'd worn the same dress she'd stood trial in, a reminder of how close the world had come to breaking her. The first rider appeared just past 7, then 2 more. By the time the sun hit full, 5 men sat at the edge of the ridge, eyes hidden beneath wide brims, guns slung loose but ready. One of them dismounted, strutting forward with a silver-tipped cane and a smirk that never reached his eyes. "You must be Calder," he called. "And you?" He tipped his hat at Mercy. "You must be the girl who killed my uncle." Mercy stepped forward. "Your uncle killed himself every time he laid hands on someone who couldn't fight back." The man laughed, but it was hollow. "Now see, I came here to settle things polite. Just give me what's mine. The land, the girl, and whatever rights he left behind. You two can walk away." Calder's voice was a low growl. "Ain't nothing here belongs to you. That silver cane spun once in the dust. Then we do this the old way." The standoff lasted the length of a breath. Then all at once, everything shattered. Gunfire cracked like thunder. Calder moved first, fast as he'd promised. 2 shots, 2 riders down. Mercy ducked behind a rain barrel, aimed slow, and squeezed the trigger. One of the men dropped, clutching his side with a scream. The silver cane man darted behind the barn, firing blind, shouting curses in a voice that cracked under fear. Mercy's heart hammered, but her hand stayed true. She caught one more Rider-Takeen aim at Calder, and with a single blast from the shotgun, ended him. The silence that followed was deafening. Then a scream, high broken. The last man tried to run. Calder stepped out from the porch, pistol drawn, but paused. "Don't," Mercy said, stepping beside him. "Let him live with it." Calder's eyes met hers. Hard. Then he lowered the gun. The man stumbled away, leaving blood in the dust and his pride behind. They stood alone amid the smoke, the yard littered with bodies and memories. "I should feel something," Mercy whispered. Calder holstered his gun. "You will. Later, when it's safe to feel again." They buried the dead at the edge of the ridge, marked the graves with stones and silence. That night, they didn't speak much, just sat on the porch, shoulder to shoulder, watching the stars reclaim the sky. And for the first time in a long, long while, Mercy Morgan breathed easy. A week passed like a slow river, winding, steady, and thick with thoughts neither of them dared speak aloud. The bodies were gone, the blood washed by rain, but the ridge still felt different, like it was holding its breath. Calder spent his days mending the barn, planting late corn he didn't expect to take root, and leaning into the kind of silence only a man used to loneliness could understand. But Mercy, she filled the place in her own quiet way. She scrubbed the porch floor till the boards showed fresh grain. She patched curtains with her old trial dress, every stitch a declaration that she was still here, still standing. And at night, she read from that old book, The Law of the Land, her voice steady, the words soft as twilight. One night, as the sky turned lavender and the whippoorwills started singing, she closed the book and looked over at him. He sat in his usual chair, boots up, hat tilted back. "Calder," she said, "I've been thinking. I reckon I can't keep calling you that forever." He glanced her way, a faint grin creasing his weathered face. "That a fact. I know your name ain't really Calder, but it's who you are now. So I figure maybe we both start fresh." He studied her for a long moment. "And who are you now, Mercy?" She didn't answer right away, just looked out at the ridgeline, the place where men came to take her and left buried instead. "I'm not who I was in Hollow Rock. That girl, they tried to hang her, bury her, but she didn't die. She's here on this porch, reading by lamplight and watching the wind stir the grass." Calder tipped his hat lower, the brim shadowing his eyes. "Then I reckon I like who she became." That night, she didn't sleep in the cot by the kitchen. She didn't ask. He didn't offer. She simply walked into the room and laid her hand on the blanket beside him. "I don't need Savon," she whispered. "I just don't want to be alone when the quiet gets too heavy." He moved over, slow and sure. "Then we'll carry the quiet together." The dawn came slow and golden, light pouring over the hills like a promise not yet broken. She rose early, fed the chickens, and poured the first cup of coffee. "You still think they'll come again?" she asked as Calder stepped out onto the porch. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe not." "But you're ready," she said. He nodded. "Always." She handed him the mug, her fingers brushing his. "Well," she said with a half-smile, "then I reckon I'm ready to." And in the hush of that morning, in the space between fear and freedom, Mercy and Calder stood not as ghosts of what was, but as something new, something whole. By the time late summer rolled in, the ridge had turned gold. The fields, though meager, had sprouted corn high enough to rustle in the breeze, and the chickens scratched without fear. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. A patch of quiet carved from the noise of the world. Calder built a new fence along the east line. Mercy baked bread in a Dutch oven she scoured to a shine. Each day had its rhythm, like a song they both knew by heart. But peace in the West was a fickle thing, and it rarely rode alone. One afternoon, a rider came, not from Hollow Rock, but from Abilene. He wore a deputy's badge and a face too young for the stories his eyes carried. He asked for Calder by name, his real one, said there was a marshal back east to skin questions about an old bounty, a case closed long ago. Names cleared, the deputy said, but some folks don't let the past stay buried. Calder took the paper without a word, read it once, then burned it in the fire. Mercy watched the ashes curl. What's it mean? He met her eyes. Means we stay or we run. She set down the mixing bowl. I'm tired of running. And I reckon you are too. That night, he packed a single bag. Not to flee, but to finish. I'll ride to Abilene, he told her. Put this ghost down for good. No more letters. No more riders. I leave in the morning. Mercy stood still, jaw set. And if you don't come back? He stepped close, lifted her chin. Then you keep this place alive. You live every day like it matters. And you remember that when you were standing on the gallows, I came for you. Tears pricked, but she didn't cry. Then go, she whispered. But don't be gone long. He rode out at first light. Dust rose behind him, like smoke from a slow-burning fire. Mercy watched from the porch until he was just a shape on the horizon. Then she turned back to the cabin, to the bread she hadn't finished kneading. The chickens clucked. The wind stirred the curtains. She lived. 3 weeks passed. Then one morning, just as the sun broke open the sky, a shape appeared on the trail. One rider. She didn't run to meet him. She waited, hands still dusted with flour. And when he reached the porch and swung down, all she said was, "You came back." Calder nodded. Always was the plan. And he stepped into the doorway, into the life they'd built not with paper or promises, but with blood, bread, and the kind of love that rides hard and stays put.